Man, have we come a long way. Started this back in October last year and now finally reached the end point when the game first started, with more still to go. Welcome back to another Alchemy Stars lore video where we go into what our cast went through in episode 8. The episode starts off with things suddenly seeming peaceful, as Navigator, who was confused on the situation, was talking with a very friendly Vice. While still trying to understand the situation, he hears someone calling out to him, wanting him to snap out of the illusion he was under. Navigator finally gets out of the illusion and gets greeted by Kuri, Vivian's dragon partner, who just took out an eclipse site. Navigator tried to remember what happened before he passed out, but it was hard for him to do as his head still hurts. Just as he was about to go find the others, Vice was the first to find him, and explains to him that they are inside Avidus. Vice then goes to explaining what happened before Navigator passed out, and the scene changes to a flashback sequence. As Vivian stayed to hold back Scummer, Navigator, Vice, and Carlene were getting ready to jump off the Avidus, but Navigator was caught by an eclipse site. With no other choice, he pushed Vice and Carlene for them to escape. As those two were falling, it didn't seem like they was going to make a safe landing, but Raphael, in the nick of time, caught them with an airship. As they had safely escaped, Vice wanted to go back to save Navigator and Vivian. Carlene thought she was being reckless, but she was determined to save them no matter what. And with Kuri, who so happened to be with them as well, she had a mean to get back on Avidus. And while she does that, Carlene would go to the city lord to get permission to activate the Makos. And after Vice had snuck back in, we're now back in the present. And now that they have reunited, it was time to find Vivian. The scene changes over where Scummer was remembering her childhood, before Forsaken grabbed her attention. Outside of their usual back and forth, Forsaken mentioned that she left a parting gift within Navigator before leaving. It goes back to Navigator, Vice, and Kuri still exploring through Avidus. Navigator establishes a link with it and uses his psychic powers to hide their presence from Scummer. He also strangely mentioned that he was feeling good, despite them being in such dense dark flow. The man in the white coat reached out to him once again, guiding him to where Vivian is. Feeling that he could be trusted, they decided to go in the said direction, while Vice keeps a drawn recorded map of their route. As that was happening, back in Lumopolis, Carlene was making a case to the council to activate the Makos. Within Lumopolis, there are three major parties that runs the city. First, there's the noble families, descendants of the ancestors who created Lumopolis, with Schwartz being the leader. Next up is the Elder Council, pretty much the decision makers of how Lumopolis rules, led by a man named Odo. And finally, there's a Hall of Justice, the faction who maintains the law and order of the city, led by Iridon. Iridon's official title is Chief Judge of Lumo Hall of Justice. Her mother was the previous Chief Judge and she ended up being her successor. She had a rough childhood as her father would pretty much find issue with anything she did, be it her grades or attitude. There will always be something he find fault in her. The top thing would be her becoming Chief Judge after her mother. Apparently he disapproved Iridon becoming Chief Judge, but she went through her own accord and took up the title anyways. Thing is, after her mother's passing, her father cried to her and apologized, even though her parents constantly argued a lot. Later on during the war, Iridon suffered major injuries to her leg, and her father protected her before perishing himself. Even though she had a rough life, she takes the job very seriously as someone who maintains law and order. As the three factions decided to vote on whether or not to activate the Makos, Odo was averse as he vetoed the proposal, claiming that activating it would do more harm than good as it takes up a lot of energy, which would cause the seal to go down. Iridon was next. She wasn't too fond of the idea either, but decided to abstain. Schwartz was last and he vetoed as well to Carlene's surprise, making it 2 votes against as the Makos would not be activated. Carlene saw in frustration. Schwartz confronts her about what the current Lumopolis is like, and then while he was lecturing her, he goes into mentioning her childhood, where she jumped out of a tree to save a cat. This confused Carlene as she wasn't able to save that cat, but she quickly understood what her father was trying to tell her. After being sent away, Carlene along with Raphael went off to activate the Makos on their own. Back on Avidus, the group was making their way closer to where Vivian was. Vice mentioned that Navigator seems weird. Not only does he not look affected by the dense dark flow they was in, but when going into a normally lit room, he freaked out a bit thinking he had to hide. As they were about to take a break, Kuri dashed off in an instant, trying to open up a closed door. But before they can open it, Navigator warned Vice as eclipse sites had appeared and tried to attack her, but she was able to fend them off and get rid of them before alerting any more. Navigator noticed that strangely enough, the eclipse sites was only focusing on Vice and ignored him. But before figuring out what's going on, they had to save Vivian first. Vivian was under an illusion and then captured under a high-level eclipse site named Soulfall, but the group busted in and attacked it to free her from its control. Soulfall is so confusing towards Navigator, not just with him running around undetected, but as Navigator was still himself. Soulfall also went into explaining about the gift from this so-called mother it mentioned, and how it was capable of turning those into eclipse sites. Then a strange sensation starts to occur within Navigator. Something was changing and images were appearing in his head. Navigator was fighting to stay conscious. The man in the white coat reached out to him again, encouraging him to fight against it. Through a major struggle, Navigator was able to fight back and regain himself, joining with Vice as they engage in battle and defeat Soulfall. After the fight and checking on Vivian, the man in the white coat appears in person. His name is Faust. Faust is a member of the organization called the True Order. They're pretty much a secret society that has influence across Astra, and although a lot of members have their own reasons and goals they want to achieve as to why they joined the True Order, the overall goal of the organization is discovering the truth. Faust is pretty much described to be a charismatic person. Any opportunity he gets, he'll at the chance tell you about the True Order and ask whether or not you'll join, although he never pushes to force people to join. The white suitcase was something given to him by Victoria, the leader, described to be a spiritual entity that's capable of devouring even an entire town, and Faust explained that sad memories are his favorite food. As he appeared, Faust came to help Navigator, asking him to remove his clothing and sew his back. Relentless at first, Navigator complied to the request. It was noticeable that something was inside his back. Faust asked Vice to dig it out of him. Vice cut into Navigator's back and pulled out what was known as a seed, the source of what can give someone power in the eclipse site, as well as transform them into one. Faust then took the seed and places it in his suitcase before heading off. It was at that moment Vivian began to wake up. Checking to make sure she was okay, the group begins to make their escape. Back in Lumopolis, Carlene and Raphael, as well as Michael, who joined them on the way, were inside the Democles control room. While Carlene begins to activate the Democles, Raphael and Michael are to barricade the doors and prevent anyone from coming in. Carlene herself admits that what she's about to do is crazy, but nonetheless, she's determined to protect her city, whatever it takes. Outside of the control room, Iridan and a number of soldiers were watching them proceed. She had the soldiers stand by for now until Carlene activates the Democles. She also gave orders to send reinforcements throughout the city once the seal falls, preparing for what's about to come. Back on Avidus, Vivian asks to stop and explain the situation. Vice tells her how the shield is about to fall and Carlene is getting ready to activate the Democles, as well as their presence is currently being hidden thanks to Navigator. After being told all that, Vivian suggests that they have the chance to take out the enemy from within, as it's the perfect opportunity to stop Scummer. Convincing Vice to go along with the plan, we then go into a flashback sequence to where Carlene failed to save the cat. Odo was with her and she asked him about her mom. Odo, being the jerk that he was, pretty much was calling her a useless kid who wouldn't be able to do anything. Back in the present, Raphael was telling Carlene about how the Hall of Justice has him surrounded. Understanding the situation, Carlene had her and Michael continue to barricade the doors as he begins to activate the Democles. As the Democles activated, panic begins to surge back in the console hall. People were panicking as the seal was beginning to fall. As it was clear that the Democles was beginning to activate, Odo could tell that Carlene was a culprit and was demanding Schwartz to reprimand her. But Schwartz explained to him how right now defending the city is a top priority. Back on Avidus, things started to tremble and Scummer discovered their whereabouts. After her and Navigator argued, the group had to hurry to where Scummer was, as they needed to distract her as long as possible for Carlene to activate the Democles, fighting off eclipse sites as they make their way through. Once again, Scummer was remembering her past, how weak she felt and how she killed her people with her own hands. She was waiting for Navigator to come to her, wanting him to see the power she was about to display, and eventually join her, while the high-level eclipse site that was with her was beginning to become irritated with her choices. Back at Lumopolis, Odo, frustrated at the situation, was demanding Iridan to hurry up and break down the door, but she was being blocked off by Gabriel. As the sky darkened and the eclipse site was invading, Uriel went off to take care of them. Iridan commanded her soldiers to advance, as Gabriel was ready to stop them. While the situation was escalating, Carlene noticed the Democles was charging slowly, so she decided to use her own power in order to speed things up. Back on Avidus, Scummer and Navigator faces off once again, but before they could reach Scummer, they were stopped by another high-level eclipse site called Deathless, who was at the time the most pain-in-the-ass boss in trying to get through within the game. But thankfully, after many tries, the group was able to defeat it, and Scummer finished it off as the two were continuously butting heads with each other. Taking the chance, Navigator linked up to take control of Avidus, but Scummer wasn't making it easy, forcing him out as he had superior control. Navigator continues to try to stop her, while Vice and Vivian tries to help physically, but she was too powerful. As she was in the process of enjoying her victory, things suddenly went quiet, as at that moment, Colleen activated the Sword of Damocles, firing an intense and powerful Lumina cannon at Avidus. Scummer was confused as he couldn't move, but that's because Navigator was getting in her way once again, keeping Avidus in place, but it didn't seem like Damocles was going to reach it. That is until Schwartz came to help Carlene, guiding the beam as it pierces Avidus, taking out the danger that was threatening Lumopolis. Upon contact, Scummer was remembering her professor, who was cursing her for killing her own people. Far away at some hidden place, Forsaken met up with a high-level Eclipsite, who seemed different from the others, discovering that Scummer was just being used for some part of a greater scheme. We then go back to Lumopolis. After the situation has been resolved, Schwartz was discussing reports with a soldier before sending him off. He then received a call from Reinhardt. Reinhardt is the Grand Marshal of the Illumina Federation, a courageous and strong leader, respected by all within the Federation. Although I mentioned it in the last episode, she grew up within an Illumina hospital. Once she was at age, she officially joined as an Illumina soldier, taking on and accomplishing missions that allowed her to rise in ranks and eventually become Grand Marshal. It's even thanks to her that those like Hero and Serona, who wasn't originally a part of Illumina, happened to join the Federation. Many people within Illumina truly respect her, even have a friendly rivalry going on with another Legion commander named Raph. Schwartz and Reinhardt lightly went over about what went down, how both still had cards to play in the future, thus bringing an end to episode 8. With that, we pretty much covered all the episodes that were first released, but there's still plenty more to go over, and we got 2 more episodes to go before covering all of part 1 of this vast story, and I still plan on continuing to cover this amazing invention that we've had so far. Though funny enough, after episode 8, there are things that goes down in between later episodes through event stories that are sometimes referenced, but my plan right now is to just focus on the main stories of Alchemy Stars. For now, we're going to end things here. Leave a comment and tell me what you think about this series so far, and whether or not you want to hear me cover the event stories as well. Even though this is just a fun hobby, I'm always looking for ways to improve this for those that enjoys Alchemy Stars content. Until next time.